called to bless the coup. Okay, that's my analysis of that. I'll just stop there.
What about the robbery, though?
Oh, the robbery, yes. I'm sorry.
It's important.
It's important. It's important, and I still have 4 minutes, so I can do the robbery. So, Mary Sherman's apartment was burglarized. When Lee gets Judy back to New Orleans, it's 10 o'clock at night. And I'm looking at the police report, and it says at 11 o'clock, the apartment was burglarized.
And Lee was out there at that time, too.
Well, I mean, that's the point. He's back in New Orleans, right? But there's no danger to Mary. That morning, Mary flew to London, and somebody drove her to the airport. Okay? Now, London just, you know, Oxford's right outside of London, and this linear particle accelerator is shooting the gamma rays at the Platinum Pyramid. There's 2 of them on the planet. One's in New Orleans and the other's in Oxford. And Mary Sherman is shuttling back and forth between the 2. Okay? And I'm looking at what was stolen. I mean, that's what burglaries are about, right? What's stolen? $35 worth of cash and negotiables, $350 worth of furs, $350 worth of jewelry, and I'm going to put this in modern day dollars so you really get the point, $12,500 worth of miscellaneous. So I sent Judy an email. I said, Judy, you were in Mary's apartment. Can you tell me what was in there that might have been stolen that could have added up to that much money? And a couple days later, she sends me back an email with a list of scientific equipment like oil immersion microscopes and autoclaves and these, what they used to call Ferry's wheel that spins around and keeps the viruses active and alive. And it all adds up to $12,500. I think what happened on August 31st, after Judy had crossed swords with Ochsner, Ochsner realized he was in a very vulnerable position and he wanted this thing sanitized and shut down. And the moment Mary was out the way, he sent in people to burglarize her apartment and remove all the evidence so that neither Mary nor Judy could connect Ochsner to this project. Gee, thanks for the reminder.
Well, you're the one that found out the information. I didn't know that their place had been burgled. You know?
Well, that's, as I said, I fell down the rabbit hole, and this thing has kept mushrooming. You know, I didn't intend to get into all this. I didn't know it was there, you know. But I did make the commitment to myself that I was going to follow the story wherever it led. And I think that's all you can do, because when I realized about the, I'll be with you in a second, when I realized about the contamination of the polio vaccine, I said, what do? I mean, you either speak up or shut up. So I decided to speak up. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I have more than one question. Real quick. How did they know who was the patient at the mental hospital for this blood station test? Why didn't they flush the stuff down the toilet at the health center? And is the word you were looking for informant? And when is the last time you asked for that?
Wanted.
Did you get all that?
No, I didn't get all of it, but let me start with the, why did they flush it down the toilet at Mary Sherman's apartment? Okay, they killed the mice on Louisiana Avenue Parkway. They cut out the tumors, they made the stuff for the test tubes and the slides. They put it in a lunchbox and brought it to Mary Sherman's apartment. So it's at, the stuff that's getting flushed is at Mary Sherman's apartment. And the apartment they're using to flush it is just 2 doors down from hers. Okay, you want to try another one?
How did they know what?
Who the guy they were going to kill was, okay? They just said, we need someone, a Cuban if you got one, from death row that we can test the weapon on. And so that person, quote, volunteered and was driven over to the mental hospital. And the whole reason that Clay Shaw was waiting in this square was there was a payphone. You know, back then we didn't have cell phones, right? So there's a payphone. And he's waiting for the payphone to ring and says the patient has left the penitentiary. That is his cue. And I think it was something more romantic like we'll meet you on Bourbon Street, but that's another story. That's his cue to go out and wait for the van so that they can get behind the van and arrive at the gate of the hospital as a convoy, with the prisoner in the first vehicle and the biological weapon in the second vehicle, and then they're just going to follow the prisoner in and eject him, which David Ferrie probably did, in my opinion. Yes, sir?
I've read a Wikipedia article about Hugo Chavez, and apparently a lot of people in Venezuela think he was murdered with a cancer weapon. Have you heard anything about that? Or
Well, Fidel told him, they will give you cancer. Okay?
Where did you hear that from?
Fidel got it.
You'll have to ask Fidel. But, you know, but that's where that whole thing starts, is Fidel tells Chavez. And then, of course, Chavez knows the U.S. is after him in the first place, and that's where that goes. I have no hard information on that, but I did get a number of radio interviews because of it, so I'm aware that it happened. Yes, ma'am.
And I would gather they gave Jack Ruby cancer also?
Yes.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, did they give Jack Ruby cancer? And the answer is yes, for a couple of reasons. One is the prisoner, it took 28 days to kill the prisoner. It was 28 days from the day Jack Ruby was diagnosed till he died. Secondly, if you all know who Jim Marrs is, I'm a good friend of Jim Marrs. Jim used to teach a college course on the JFK assassination. He had a guy come take the course who operated an electron microscope. And he said, I'm used to looking at cancer cells, right? And there's this type of cell and there's that type of cell and they're never together, right? Just structurally. He said, but I looked at Ruby cells and they were together, like they had all been mixed together in some sort of cocktail. And that's pretty good evidence about that. And of course, you know, why was the timing important? He had just been told that he could stand a retrial outside of Dallas, and they didn't want him to do that. And if you watch the real videos of Ruby right before he dies, he's getting more and more stressed out and panicky and saying, I'm in big trouble here, and the reason I'm in big trouble is people way up there who left me out of here, okay? Anyway, so I think Jack Ruby was killed with the weapon, which Jack Ruby knew about, by the way, and Judy will tell you about that.
I have a quick comment and a couple of questions.
Huh?
The comment is, whoever designed your book did a really good job. Having the Google Maps of New Orleans and things like that allowed me to put a context into all these stories in a way that wouldn't have happened if I had just been reading words. So kudos to the designer on that.
Good, thank you, I'll pass that on.
I worked
We fought for that. We fought
as
for
a
that.
science producer for PBS for 25 years. I've gone to Fermilab, I've gone to Lawrence Livermore, I've gone to a bunch of the laboratories that have accelerators there. All the high energy accelerators are confined with magnets. That's the way they without
Control the beam, yeah.
control them. So I want to know, what would the modality be that could take this confined substance and burn off her arm and kill her?
I don't think it was the radiation that burned off her arm. I think it was just pure electricity.
Okay.
Okay, and I think it was sabotaged, and they ran it back to the yeah.
Person over
And
here is-
the last question is, have you or Ms. Baker received any pushback from various people for trying to put out your
Oh my
story?
God.
And if so, who are the people that are doing the push? And do you have any sense of the government trying to continue the cover-up?
Well, the government doesn't need to push back on me to continue the government cover-up because they control the media, is what it boils down to. And I have not had the slightest problem, okay? But part of that is because I'm very careful about what I say, I'm very careful about who I say it to, and at this point, sunlight is safety for me, right? The more light I have on me, the safer I am. Because if anything happens to me, I'm no threat. I don't have any budget, subpoena power, anything like that, like Harrison did. I have a story. And if they do anything to me, they're putting the spotlight on the story. And they don't want that. Okay? I haven't even been sued. I mean, think about that. Think of what I have said, you know?
Sure.
I don't think they want me in a courtroom, you know?
There's a guy over here.
Well, yeah, in addition to Chavez, there were 4 other Latin American leaders
Right.
killed within this short space of time, him and 4 others. But the question I have is on the sabotaging of the particle accelerator. is who would have been the first person to turn the accelerator on every day? That they, I don't.
This is at night.
No, I'm with them. Waiting.
And so that it wouldn't necessarily be her. I would think it would be somebody else. I don't know, but they wanted to bring attention to the particle accelerator. Obviously, if they sabotage it, because the
part of the answer to that question is, where was Mary Sherman for the 2 weeks before? She was in Boston, home of high voltage engineering.
Right.
I think she was up there getting trained to handle it. Because the original purpose of this was to develop an anti-cancer vaccine. And they had, and I can give you a list of most of the names, of world-class experts, including a guy who was a PhD from Princeton who ran linear particle accelerators for a living. And they had shut all that down at the time of the Kennedy assassination. And they were, I think Mary was trying to get this thing revived so they could go back to the original research. And somebody wanted, again, to bring the attention to the particle accelerator.
So it wasn't being, in other words, it wasn't being used prior to that.
Not on a daily basis. There was no staff there or anything else. I think it had been shut down for a hiatus period. And she said, we don't need that. You know, Enrico knew how to use this stuff. You can train me how to use it. I'll run the linear particle accelerator. And I think that's why she was up in Boston, which is where they designed it, built it. And then, of course, the moment this happens, they get down there. I mean, that's where LBJ goes to JFK's grave, right? He stops in the Pentagon on the way. And they remove the linear particle accelerator immediately. That's where we get these reports of the guys with the machine guns guarding the thing. They pull it immediately. And LBJ puts all that research into Fort Detrick, and the first week of Nixon's presidency, he declares war on cancer and takes all that retrovirus research from Fort Detrick and moves it over to the tumor lab under Dr. Gallo's direction.
What happened to Dr. Alton Oshner?
He died in 1982 of renal failure.
And like,
Oh, he's bulletproof. Nothing happens.
Divorce over the grandchildren and any kind of
Oh boy, I wouldn't have wanted to be at that Thanksgiving dinner table. You know, there's some things, if you know what you're looking for, you can see. I mean, where somebody asked him about euthanasia, and he says, "Well, if I was in that condition, I'd like somebody to put me out." You know, I mean, a couple of little hints like that. But you know, Oshner had a 40-year history of secret assignments to the United States government, and in 1959, his thing was signed off by J. Edgar Hoover himself. Okay, so he's bulletproof. And I think that relates back to the Stanley Stump thing. Oh, I didn't tell you. I figured out when Stanley Stump died. I was told he died a couple of months after Mary Sherman. Because this thing about everybody knew, right? I got on the radio, and we have a long story. I found out he died December 21st, 1977, 13 and a half years after Mary died. Somebody kept it quiet for 13 and a half years. Protecting Stanley Stump protects Alton Oshner. And I think that's where the power comes from.
Are you, let me see if I got this correct. Are you suggesting that Mary Sherman went into the, she was now learning how to use the accelerator, she went in and the machine was sabotaged when she went to turn it on and it blew her away because?
Yes.
Okay. She was purposely going there herself anyway.
It
Yes.
was at night, for heaven's sakes.
And she was probably with Sarah Stewart at the time because she was expecting a friend from out of town. Sarah Stewart and her went to University of Chicago together. Sarah Stewart's a woman that discovered the cancer-causing virus and was in charge, technically in charge of the facility at the U.S. Public Health Service because she leaves NCI and goes to U.S. Public Health Service in 1960, the year they're starting this project. So I think the two of them walked in there together. And she just threw the switch like she normally would to kick it in, and somebody had messed with the wiring to strip away the insulation and bring all that electricity back to her hand. And it was a flash bulb of violence. You know, there was no torturing or anything else. I mean, it was a split second, and her arm was blown off, and she was on the floor, but her heart was still beating. Thank you for letting me borrow a little bit of time, Judy.
Well, I don't know how this is set up here, and I think she just left the room, so.
Anne?
Oh, you're there, good.
Thank you.
So now,
Sorry, I had to let someone in. Okay.
so if you would tell me what's going on here so I can show them a few pictures.
Okay, well, you're on the screen there.
I am?
I'll turn off
Okay.
the light so that.
That's nice. Okay, let's see what we can do here. Well, I've got my PowerPoint here going, but
Okay.
I don't think it's hooked up yet.
It is, yeah. Your computer is there. It's
Yeah.
just what is on your screen is not showing up for some reason. So.
Here's a mouse in my computer.
Let's see if we can.
If not, I'll just, but I'd like to see the pictures.